I just want to say Grandma was born in 1895. As a coincidence, my daughter Heather was born in 1995. So Heather's 22 now, and she would be the same age as Grandma when she had Dad. And
oh my word!
Yeah, this is right at the end of World War One. We're winning, and people are anticipating that the war is going to end. So there's a jubilant kind of behavior in the United States. Dad was born, and there was also an influenza epidemic. Grandma thought that Dad had it, and she thought she was going to lose him. And I can see that when Heather was young, she was sleeping, and she was sleeping so soundly, that I thought, oh my gosh, I was shaking her and she wouldn't wake up. So I took her to the emergency room, and then she woke up by the time we got to the emergency room. So Grandma was really upset that Dad might die, but he didn't, and he lived through the 20s and the 30s. In 1936, he graduated high school, 18, and met Mom in high school, and their relationship went on, and they had a daughter in 1940.
When Dad was born, he was actually born at home in the kitchen, on the kitchen table, as I understand it, and Grandpa actually had the job of being the anesthesiologist. He had to put the ether on a cloth or a sponge or something and hold it next to Grandma's nose and mouth, and she would tell him, okay, George, that's enough. So she didn't want to go out in the process, but she wanted to be there. Actually, there must have been a midwife involved or something, but Grandpa did have the job of anesthesiology.
Holy cow. Well, I was the firstborn, and I guess you could say one of my earliest memories was of us living in Evanston, Illinois. Dad was going to Northwestern University, and I had just little tidbitty things. Nani, or Mom, was raised by Nana, all by her. Nana was a widow. But Nana had an accident. This goes into the story about going back to being in Evanston. But anyway, Nana had a little accident. There was lightning that struck. It didn't strike her washing machine directly, but it came down through the electrical, and it gave her a really bad shock. And from that point on, she was deathly afraid of lightning. Well, Mom grew up in that atmosphere, and Mom was afraid of lightning. So when we were living in Evanston, I remember Mom being petrified when it would storm, and Dad would make us both, Mom and I, sit at the kitchen window and watch the lightning outside, because I was beginning to become afraid, and he did not want me to be afraid. So he'd make us sit there and watch the lightning outside. And, like I say, I was probably about 3 years old, and I was just petrified having to sit there and watch the lightning. I remember us going to the Bisking picnics every year, and we would walk. And I remember one of them was about a 5-mile hike, and I remember that because Mom was surprised. She didn't go with. It was just Dad and I. And she was surprised, and she said, because I was only about, maybe 7 or 8 years old. And she said, you guys walked all the way? And he said, yeah. And she said, well, how far was it? And he said, about 5 miles, I guess. And she was just astonished that I was able to walk that distance with him. But, of course, once we got there, it was so blooming hot. And Dad was drinking a beer. So I took he was busy talking to somebody, so I just took his beer out of his hand and started drinking the beer. And he looked over, and the beer was all gone. And he said, you can't be drinking that. You can't be drinking that. So I remember their first car. They had this light green Plymouth. It was kind of like a coupe. And that was Mom and Dad's first car. And, that thing was so beautiful, so shiny and new, and they were so excited. And we were still living upstairs at Nana's house. They had not bought their first house yet. So then they finally bought their first home, which was on Artesian in Blue Island. And the house is still there. I've done a Google map flyover, and it looks pretty much the same. But I want to say that I think that they paid a little over $3,000 for that first home.
Wow.
And Dad, of course, being the ham radio operator that he was, he put in a huge antenna. I mean, this thing was gigantic, ginormous. And it disturbed all the neighbors' TV programs.
Yeah.
And we were constantly getting calls from the neighbors complaining that when Dad was on his radio, that they couldn't watch their TV because he was coming through the TV, his voice. And that was when he still was using Morse code at that time. And so it wasn't his voice, it was his Morse code that was coming through. I remember when Dad quit smoking. We were living on Artesian, and in fact, I was 7 years old when we moved there, and he used to give me a quarter and send me over to the corner drugstore at Western and whatever that street was that intersected with Artesian. But over on Western Avenue, there was this little drug variety store, and I'd go over. I mean, can you imagine this today? You send your 7-year-old kid for cigarettes. So I'd go over there and I'd say, I need a pack of Lucky Strikes. And so I'd give him my quarter, he'd give me the Lucky Strikes, and I'd go home. And one day, Dad came home and he said to Mom and I, he says, you haven't noticed that I quit smoking? And both of us said, no. And he said, yeah. He says, look, the brown stain is gone from my finger. Because back then there were no filters on the cigarettes. So that was when Dad quit smoking and never smoked a cigarette after that. He quit cold turkey. And then, of course, Carol was just a little toddler at the time. And then George came along in 1950. And the house got too small because our family was growing. So guess where we went? We went back to Nana's house, which was even smaller. But we lived upstairs of Nana's house, and we were there for half of the school year, and then we bought the house on Collins. And you all probably remember the stories of how Dad would go off to work and Mom would tear stuff out so that when he'd come home, he'd have to remodel. He came home one time, all the kitchen windows were gone. I mean, that was the back porch, but she was going to turn it into the kitchen. And she had ripped out all the windows, so when you walked in the front door, you looked straight out the back. But, I'm skipping through time, but I don't know, I shared with you some of Dad's artwork on the message board that we've got going, and I shared pictures. But one thing I wish that I could share the other letters with you. Maybe I will go ahead and scan them, but I've got several. But anyway, one thing I don't know if any of you remember, but Dad was really very strong and very athletic. And he used to, there's this gymnastic move where you pull yourself up on a cross beam, and then you twirl around it, around and around and around. And he could actually, he could lift himself up so he was standing on his hands on that beam. And then he'd fling it, and then he'd fling himself around. I mean, like I say, it is amazing. And, you know, we thought it was awesome as kids, or I thought it was awesome as a kid. But you don't realize how difficult that is until you're much older and you go, wow, I can't even stand on my hands, let alone fling myself at the bar. So he had many talents. You know, his cartooning, his artistry, his radio, his violin making, his wine making. I mean, the list goes on of all the things he endeavored, and even his public speaking. I know I'm missing some. Violin, and you guys can fill in too. I want somebody else to fill in. You know, sometimes people will say things and it'll trigger your mind and you go, oh, I have to share that. So you guys go first. Well,
just a couple of things. You made me think about, you know, when Grandma had Dad, and I remember talking about he was a July baby, so she would take him outside in the carriage, and she would let him nap in the carriage, in the buggy, and he was entertained by the leaves in the trees. And I think about that to this day because I can't imagine Jack or Quinny just being enthralled with the leaves on the trees and occupying their minds for very long. And when Dad was born, or maybe it was before Dad was born, Grandpa bought a grocery store for Grandma as added income. And they sold that because Grandma just was so busy with the newborn baby, she just couldn't handle taking care of the grocery store, too. I don't know if you guys had heard about that.
I had not.
Oh, okay. And then I remember Dad talking about, I think it was when he was in his teens, and he was monkeying around with his ham radio, and he was holding wires in each hand, and electricity was starting to pass through his body. And the only way he could break that was to allow himself to fall down the stairs at Dick Plain Street. There was a little alcove next to the stairs, and that's where he did his ham radio stuff. Do you remember that story, Jean?
No.
Okay. I mean, I think I heard Dad talk about it. You know, that he almost was a goner because he was electrocuting himself. And then one time he asked for a chemistry set for Christmas, and I guess his mom and dad, being practical jokers, gave him a set of canning jars for his chemicals. And he grew up in a house with, he had his brother Kenneth. Gordon was much younger, so I guess he grew up with Gordon, with Kenneth and Emily. And Kenneth would keep animals in the house. So there's things like a crow, and I can't remember all the other kinds of animals that he had. But along with physical strength, you know, Jeannie talked about his abilities on doing bar work. There's tales told that when George and I were little, that he would do push-ups with George and I on his back. Now, I have...
I remember that. I remember that.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew.
I never got to see that. When I see Jack and Quinn, I think, holy cow, if I could do one push-up, I would really be lucky. I can't imagine doing 100 or so. We did a lot. And then Jack was always very active in his church. He was known to give sermons when the minister went out of town. And then one time they decided to renovate the parsonage, and they were shoring up the foundation in the parsonage. And Dad was kneeling in the powdered cement, and he came home. He had raw wounds on his knees from kneeling in the cement. But he felt a need there. He felt obligated, or not obligated. He wanted to give what he could to the church, and he couldn't give financially, so he gave his labor. And one other story I was going to tell you, but it's much later, when I was in high school. Dad started going to night school when I was born in 1947, and he continued in night school until I graduated from high school at the age of 19. And so he was gone a lot in the evenings, and, Mom had to care of the kids, and it was exhausting for her. And I'd want to stay up. I didn't want to go to bed. I'd want to stay up late. So I told Mom I needed help with my algebra or my geometry or something. So she let me stay up until Dad got home after his night class. That was probably 10 o'clock or 10:30. And Dad had come home. He wanted to go to bed, but he had to help me with my homework. So he was on to me. He wasn't going to let it slide. So he'd take out his slide rule. He tried to teach me algebra with a slide rule. Oh, boy, I didn't do that more than once. Okay, somebody else can have a turn. Is he there? Oh.
I missed the part where Carol burned down the garage.
I was going to ask that.
We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that on Carol's 100th birthday.
I was wondering when that one was going to come up.
No, it's George's turn.
Well, where's George?
He probably went to... Is he pouting because he didn't get to go first?
George and Amber got off because they had to talk to his lawyer. Check your Facebook messages.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Well, then... Okay, then Ray, Ray, why don't you go ahead, and then they can get back on. And her umbrella. Yeah. Uh-huh. Right. Huh. Wow.
Did you say that the outhouse was a two-seater?
Yes.
What the heck is a two-seater outhouse?
You could sit and hold hands.
I think that's what it was for.
That's romantic.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ray. Uh-huh.
Go to 91 to, or 93. No.
That was not the Plymouth. The Plymouth was their very first car. Yeah, they replaced the Plymouth probably with the Ford station wagon. Yeah, and then somewhere along the line they got the red Corvair. Oh, she was expecting Glenn when they got the Corvair. Dad would hitch the boat to that thing. Oh, when you get done, Ray, I've got a couple stories. Go ahead.
Yeah, you sat farting on the corn all the way home. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, all that fiber, that's good for you. Oh, no. Uh-huh. Yes. Go ahead.
Mason jar?
No, ceramic jars. Aren't they like jugs? Aren't they like jugs? Big earthenware crock. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd call it a crock, not a jar.
Jug. A crock, a jug. Yeah. Oh no. Oh. Wow. Aw. That's right.
Did George come back? No,
I don't think so.
Amber said that he's almost done, so hopefully they'll be able to get on.
Well, while this is just a little,
me, everybody.
Before you go, Glenn, let me just tell a little trivia, because Ray was talking about the different cars. When we lived on Collins Street, didn't they have a blue station wagon?
Oh, yeah, that was
okay. So I was about 14 going on 15. Ray was a baby, and we were going to take a trip. And you may have heard the story from Mom and Dad, but I remember this vividly. So we're packing up the car, and we're packing up the top of the car because Dad made some kind of box to put up on top of the car to hold our clothing and everything. And I mean, we were going to go on a trip out west. So we all pile into the car, drive off. We get all the way over to, you remember where the quarry was?
127, where the highway goes.
Yeah, well, I want to say it was 123rd, which was Baroque. Is that 127th or 123rd? Yes.
127th, where you met the Northwest Highway? The toll road.
I don't know. This was on the road that I think it was 123rd, and it takes you past the quarry where they got clay. And all of a sudden, Mom turns around. Dad's driving, and Mom turns around and she's looking at all of her kids and she says, "Where's Ray?" And we all go, I don't know. We left Ray at home. He was sound asleep in his crib. We had to turn around and go get him.
I remember that.
Do you remember that?
Yeah,
I do.
Maybe ready to get on the tollway.
Yeah. I mean, it was just. Mom was in a panic and Dad was kind of straight-faced, but Dad had this funny sense of humor, which a lot of the worn men seem to have. It was a quirky sense of humor, and so yeah. And so I think even though Mom was panicking and harumphing, Dad was kind of sitting there going.
Yeah. Well, that whole trip, you were the babysitter for Ray, and he breaks down.
And I said I was 14, but I was 15 because he was a year old by that time, and I took care of Ray the whole time, and Dad would be about 10 paces, 20 paces behind me, and he'd yell at the top of his lungs, "Is that your young'un? Is that your young'un?" Oh my gosh, I was so mortified, and people would turn around and look, and oh gosh, I wanted to just wring his neck. That was horrid.
I got in my teens, and when we travel to the cottage and back, he'd stop at a gas station and go, "Do you have a ladies' bathroom? My daughter has to go." And I wanted to just crawl under something.
Oh yeah, he knew how to embarrass you.
Ray still does that. Anyway, nobody talked about green tape or vegetable soup
or hot dogs.
Hey, my turn is next.
Go ahead.
Oh, go
George
ahead.
back on? Yeah, I'm back. I thought I heard George.
No, you can
George, you got to tell here.
you want.
What was that? What? I think it's George's turn. I'm back. It's your turn. My turn.
Tell us yours. To tell stories.
The story of Dad.
Of,
from what you remember.
Things.
Tell you a story about Dad, huh? Nice thing. What's that? Yeah, give Glenn a chance. Oh, okay. All right. Well, I guess I'm going to have to have more than I planned because I thought if everybody had two stories, but boy, there's a lot of stories. Okay, so I was born in '62, and I remember Blue Island, and Jean was upstairs, and I remember Linda. We played, and then, huh? Yeah, we don't want to talk about me or anything. or cutting hair. So
yeah, right.
I do that. Just
Who's the one
flashing
that
over
goes in the
what was going on.
toilet? Hey!
What? What happened?
Okay, Glenn, you
goes in the toilet.
Glenn, you've got the floor. Take it.
Okay. Anyway, so there's not a lot I remember from Blue Island. What I remember is Naperville, because we moved out to Naperville, and I spent my whole life there until I left, and Mom was still there. Dad, for me, I saw a change in Dad. When I was younger in Naperville, Dad was at a point in his career where he was going on business trips. And I was still young enough that I'd see him, actually, even when he'd go to work, it seemed like a business trip to me. Oh. Well, you want me to talk louder?
Oh, we gotcha. I think that's Amber.
Okay. But anyway, he would go, even work to me was a business trip. And I remember he'd leave to go to work, and Mom and I would be at the front window, and I'd wave, "Goodbye, Dad, Dad." And I had to be 4 or 5, And he'd come home from work, and he'd get me something. He made something. Here's a boat that you put this together, and then this is a boat. And it was all really exciting. In 5th grade, he had a science project, and he brought everything home from work so that I could make plastic in front of the class. And he talked to the teacher, and he said, "Now, there's some sulfuric acid in here and some other things. Be real careful with that. Make sure you throw it down the drain." And, instructing the teacher so that I would be safe with it and making sure that nothing happened. Then he lectured me, too, to be careful. And I made plastic for the class, and it was neat. What else was there? Different. He'd go on business trips to Puerto Rico. He brought me a shirt back that said, "Estoy orgulloso de ser puertorriqueño." And I, of course, had to figure out what that said. And eventually I understood that I was proud to be a Puerto Rican.
Oh, okay.
So I wore that shirt around for a while. And after a while, I was about 10-ish. Everybody had moved away. George joined the Coast Guard. Ray joined the Air Force, and I was kind of alone there. Dad was, I think, 54. I'm 55 right now, and I can understand the health thing. Oh my gosh, I got this going wrong and that going wrong, and it's the beginning of, not the end, but it's the beginning of the health era. And his demeanor kind of changed, so he wasn't the happy guy bringing stuff home. So that's kind of the dad I knew, for the most part, from 10 on, because you don't know much about life when you're a smaller kid. But as you grow up, you know that. So there was a lot of, when Dad hung around the house, he just sat in his den and did his thing either on the computer or on the ham radio, or he started making wine again. I guess he made it at one time that I didn't realize that he had made it before. I think I had heard that story about Ray stomping the grapes, which is kind of funny. And he started making the wine and making violins, which I actually have one, and I think he gave one to Georgie. And I don't know if he gave one to anybody else.
Yeah, Uncle Glenn, I had that violin in elementary school, and that's when I learned how to play. My brother still has that.
Oh yeah. Good.
Hey,
Amber.
Amber.
Okay, can I interject a couple things, because you guys, my siblings, are going to remember this. Do you guys remember the shoe fairy?
Yes, the good shoe fairy.
No.
I should remember the shoe fairy. Huh?
But it always happened on payday.
Oh, yeah, I know it. We'd put our shoe out, and the shoe fairy would come at night and fill it with goodies. And it didn't have to be a holiday. It didn't have to be Christmas or Easter or your birthday. It was just payday. And how about Pumpkinhead? Do you remember Pumpkinhead?
Actually, I remember Pumpkinhead out in Blue Island. I have
you guys
story about that, short little one.
Go ahead and tell about Pumpkinhead, because the grandkids probably don't know what this is.
Well, he wore these waders, that came all the way, almost like overalls, and their boots. Huh?
Oh, that was. Oh, that's right. That's right. I forgot. Pipsqueak Magoon. There was a guy from the Army.
And he got his head shot off.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. No, I think Glenn was about 3 and Linda was about 4. And he was really doing them.
Well, I think it had to be about 4 because, time of awareness. And can you really remember 3?
Right. Oh, yeah.
I would say 4.
If you have those pictures, I wish you would post them on this message board that we've got going. Because I don't have any pictures like that.
Yeah, I don't have any Pipsqueak Lagoon pictures.
Yeah, I don't either.
You almost told all the story. Because, that was the story. He came to the front door, and I was so shocked that I had to run to find Dad. And I was running all over the house looking for Dad to try to find him. Tell him, he's here, you got to see him. And then I got back, and then Dad was back again. Oh, did you see him? He was here.
Well, if you find those pictures, please post them. I think that would be funny. Linda, are you there?
Yeah.
Do you remember Pipsqueak Magoon?
I remember him talking about it, but I didn't remember what it was.
See, that's why you've got to find those photos. I mean, this is not...
You don't remember being there that day?
No.
Okay. I don't remember if you were there or not.
You were, because I was there.
Well, by the time you were 4, Glenn, Linda had already moved away.
Oh, we moved away when she was 5.5.
But Glenn was 4.
Yeah, I was already 4, though.
Yeah, because when I got married, when I got married, Glenn was convinced if George got married, they had to move with him. Because after all, they moved when I got married.
Anyway.
Oh, hey, I was a little kid at the time. Okay.
I didn't get
other dress-up things were Santa Claus, and I remember asking things for Santa Claus and didn't get any, so it kind of wrecked it. So I think that upset Dad, so that I was such a bummer on that Christmas. I was going to mention something about going back to Dad's youth real quick. I remember there's a story that Grandma had told, Grandma Warren, and she talked about Dad playing with his little toy soldiers outside, and it was a windy day, and the wind blew the toy soldiers over, and he'd, what the heck, and he'd set them back up again, and then all of a sudden the wind would pick up, and it'd blow the soldiers over, and he looked up at the wind blowing through the tree, and he set the things back up again, and the wind came again, and he jumped up, and he walked over the tree, he kicked the tree. It was the tree that was the wind. Anyway, when I was 9, we had a big trip down to Cape Kennedy to see Apollo 11. What was that, Ray? 11. And yeah, and we drove the whole way, which was fun for me. You know, it seemed like just a big long trip. It didn't seem like driving does today. But we got down there, and there was orange juice. He stopped at a curbside place, and he wanted to try the orange juice, and he was convinced that the guy was going to rip him off. And I'm not really sure about the story. You know what, Ray? With the Dad and the orange juice? Why don't you tell that real quick?
Well, George, now are you ready to tell us your remember?
Well, I'm not quite finished yet. I'm still going.
Oh, okay.
So so on that trip, we went down there and we got some Lem little breakout puzzle things that you could make out of heavy cardboard, and you could make Lem. And we got down there after playing with all the Lems, and we're watching the thing take off, and this historic thing happens once in history. And Ray was really excited about it, and he wanted to make sure Dad recorded it. And Dad's on top of the car with the camera on the tripod, and he's looking through it with his binoculars. He's looking with his binoculars, watching the thing go up. Look at that thing go! Wow! And Ray turns and looks. Yeah, did you get that? Oh no, I didn't record the thing. It was humorous. And there was another time, same trip. I think we were at the campground or something, and Dad wanted to get a little huggy with Mom in the back seat, and I was just kind of standing there, and he closed the door, closed it right on my hand.
Oh,
ouch! And he hit. Luckily, he had the cure-all stuff that's good for anything, green tape, and he wrapped it in green tape. Wrapped it all with green tape, and I was like that for a while. until, oh, hey, it doesn't hurt that much. And it was later on that day that it was fine. But, I remember Dad was a Sunday school teacher at St. Timothy, and he taught 4th and 5th grade. And I finally made it into Dad's class, and it was, for me, it was a time of, boy, I'm feeling, oh, my dad's a teacher. And but at the same time, he didn't want to show favoritism to me, so it was good and bad. Like I said,
is that when they sang George of Jungle George? Later on, as my 10 years old and after, was when they were getting into their old age. So, that was kind of life with them, and they didn't really do much. We still went up to Wisconsin, and we'd go out on the Irene and check that out and go to Top Chicks and meet the people, Pitzes from the back. I don't know if anybody ever hung out with Halversons up there, or the Pitzes, or any of the others. But we got to know them, rode mini bikes around with them, and I kind of lost my train of thought there, but yeah, we used to go to Wisconsin, and that was about it. We didn't really do a whole lot. We didn't go to any special vacations. It was just Wisconsin, but that was enough. It was fun. It was a nice life. Yeah, that's it. Unless I come up with anything else.
George? Hey, are you there?
Okay, I'm here.
Okay, it's your turn.
Okay, it's my turn. I'm supposed to tell childhood memories, right? Well,
yeah.
All right. Well, Gene and Carol, do you remember coming out to California?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and we all had to camp out in a car, and I think Ray...
Oh, I had to sleep with your feet in my face.
Yeah. and we all fit in the station wagon. Mom and Dad slept in the back, all spread out, with the seat down. And
they had Jeannie in the...
They had these screens on all of the windows. You could open up, the windows would slide back in the back of the station wagon, and then they'd lift up the back end, and they put screens over that.
And how did they hold the screens on?
With green tape.
Green tape.
They put the green tape on the screens and hold the screens in place with the green tape. And then we had a car top carrier, and I think Dad had the car top carrier. I think he had that taped on too. Had the lid taped on the car top carrier, and I think that's reflected in those pictures where we went through the redwood. You could drive your car through the redwood.
Not anymore.
No. But anyway.
Shush, Carol. That's his story.
I'm sorry.
Anyway, in the pictures, you can see the green tape wrapped around the car top carrier, where we had all of our clothing and that stored. Another time is Ray, Glenn, and I. We all took a trip up to Wisconsin, and we took Dad's brand new car. Dad traded in that station wagon And by the time Dad traded in the station wagon, the floor was out of the back end of it. You could put your feet down and touch the road. And so Dad traded in the car, and he got a Corvair. He traded in the car for the Corvair. Well, we went on a vacation up to Wisconsin, and going up there, Mom called up a water heater, and I don't remember how she finagled that into the car. And I don't really remember the seating arrangements that well, but I remember being up in Wisconsin and Dad deciding that he wanted some corn on the cob. And so we went to this farm, and, you know, you would think that you'd be buying like a dozen or 2 dozen ears of corn. No, not Dad. Dad had to buy 2 dozen ears of corn, or 2 big bags of it, two big plastic bags, and he shoved them in the back of the Corvair, and they're on the floor. And there's us 3 boys, Ray, Glenn, and I. They're all sitting in the back, and we had to sit on the top of this corn and drive the 40-some miles or whatever from this stupid farm back to the cabin, and we only ate a dozen ears. Trying to think of some other things. Yeah, what's that? No.
Yeah, I got to go to West Virginia, and I just rode all the way there and rode all the way back. It wasn't much of a vacation for me. Oh no.
Huh?
Oh no. You say he was transporting moonshine? Hey, I got a reminder for you guys. Dave. Dad, you there? Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's here.
Okay,
We're here.
Dad had an affinity for growing or raising chickens in his garage. He did that in Naperville, and he did it on Collins, and I was still living at home when he did it on Collins. And so he bought all these baby chicks and had them in the garage, and they grew bigger and bigger. And finally, one Sunday, we came home from church, and Mom served chicken dinner. And when us kids found out that it was the chickens from the garage, none of us wanted to eat those chickens. I don't know what Mom did with that meal, because they were always. Oh my gosh! I don't know, somewhere between maybe 25 and 50. And I think that was why Carol burned the garage down, because she didn't want any more chickens.
Hey, I have a couple more stories. I've been reminded of some here.
Okay.
Chickens. My turn again. Can it be my turn?
Go ahead.
Okay. This is Glenn. The chickens. You're talking about that box that Dad had on top of the car. It was a plywood box or something, or OSB board. Yeah. Is that the one? He had that what, through the 60s? Oh, because I thought it was a new looking box. But anyway, then that makes sense, because it seemed like it was a newer box. But what was once our packing box for going on vacations, he used to raise the chickens in. It was his chicken pen. And, I'm not really sure what he did when they got bigger, but I do remember that when they did get bigger, to my surprise, he had to butcher them. And I think George was there, and I don't know, Ray, if you were there when Dad butchered them. All of a sudden, he grabbed the head and cut the head off, and I was like, oh my gosh, the blood is all over, squirting out the chicken. I just saw that. The
chicken's running around.
And then George comes up with this idea with a coat hanger, how to do it, and I ran inside, and I kept on hearing this thud, real loud thud. And I went and hid under the bed, and he was crying. I couldn't believe it.
Aw. Oh, Glenn.
I was still a little bit young, but
George and Ray.
George and Ray also partook in a story, an event with me. Dad used to bring hot dogs home from work, and he'd bring them home. By the bushel. He brought so many hot dogs home. He brought so many hot dogs home. Mom. Yeah, I think he brought more than one hefty bag, because and then you had to peel the skins off of these. Hey, these are skinless hot dogs. These are so great. Oh boy. And Mom was like, oh, you could make stuff, and I'm going to make ham salad. So she'd make ham salad. There's no ham in it. It's all hot dogs. And everything. She'd make a ham in the oven, and she'd shape it like a ham, but it was all ground up hot dog, and she'd put the marks in it, crisscross marks and cloves and stuff. And she pulls out this ham, and she's, oh, here you go, and cuts it up, and it's another hot dog. So I was talking with Ray and George. I mean, I was getting really sick of them. I couldn't stand it anymore. I still can't stand hot dogs. I cannot stand hot dogs. And because of this,
neither can Carol.
So I was talking to George and Ray back in the bedroom, and it's like, hey, I hate hot dogs. How can we stop this? I don't want to eat any more hot dogs. And then George and Ray was like, well, why don't you just go tell Dad? Go tell Dad and see what you get. I said, really? Yeah, go tell him. Go tell him. It's okay. I remember Ray. Yeah, go tell him. It's okay. Go tell him. He probably will like that. He doesn't know. And this way you tell him and he'll know. So I went out in the living room. Dad's sitting there doing something. I don't know, reading the paper, doing something important. And I bothered him. I said, hey, Dad, hey, don't bring any more hot dogs home, okay? He's like, and he go, well, what do I get? What do you get? He jumped up. I had to run.
Well, he used to get on kicks, and I remember I was still in my early teens, and he used to make all of us eat liver. And oh my God, he didn't make Mom cook it like shoe leather. It had to be fried hard on both sides. And I just hated it. I don't know how Carol and George felt. But I had reached every week we'd have to eat liver. And it was, like I said, it was like shoe leather. You could barely cut it. So I'd cut up a bunch of pieces and I'd stuff my mouth. I looked like a chipmunk. And then I'd go in the bathroom and spit it in the toilet because I could not stand it. Oh, it was so awful. But he'd get on this, this liver thing was a health kick. We were all going to eat healthy, so we were going to eat liver. In the meantime, his cholesterol was going through the roof.
Can I piggyback on your hot dog story?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I grew up with hot dogs too until I can't stand them. And I got married and I moved away to Iowa, and then Jim got a job and we came back to the Chicago area. We got a really nice apartment in, never mind. I don't know where it was. But the neighbor across the hall from us knocked on the door and introduced himself, and we're talking, and he says, "You want some meat? I've got some meat. I'll give you a hamburger, or I've got Delmonte steak. Let me give you some Delmonte steaks." I'm like, oh, geez, what am I getting into here? Come to find out,
Delmonte steak.
it's a high-priced steak.
All right.
Anyway, come to find out, this dude worked for Union Carbide in the food lab, and they used the meat in testing their casing. So Dad could have had steak, and he filled us up on hot dogs. That's all that time we were eating hot dogs, we could have had steak.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, bologna. We're so lucky. Yeah, bologna. Big things of bologna.
The ham that you mentioned that Mom cooked in the oven, that was actually a piece of bologna that Mom made into a ham, and she put it in the oven, and she cooked it with the pineapples and all that stuff. She pulled it out of the oven. She tried to pass it off as a ham, and she just cut it up. It tasted like the damn hot dogs. What? Oh, God, this is terrible.
Yeah, because I remember that bologna came in a long package.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you peel the skin off, and then I can just see it.
Like taking a big giant rubber off.
I was in on the very beginning of that hot dog bologna phase, and then I left home. So you guys were the ones that you were the ones that got the brunt of that. I got the liver.
We go to a picnic for Nana's birthday, and other people are bringing hot dogs, or they're bringing hamburgers and bratwurst, and they look at me and go, "Do you want a hot dog or a hamburger?" I go, "Hamburger. The hamburgers."
Hamburger.
Dad would use a Hefty bags. He'd fill up Hefty bags. He'd bring them damn hot dogs home in the Hefty bag. And I mean, there were a lot of damn hot dogs, and we'd have to peel the casings off of those hot dogs, and then they'd stick them in the freezer along with the bologna. And so,
Union Carbide hot dogs had a special taste, and you can't put one of those in front of me ever. I can tell.
Yeah, I think all those hot dogs taste. There's a certain hot dog taste. It's in all cheap hot dogs.
Yeah,
and that's the one. Alice loves hot dogs, and she cooks hot dogs in the microwave. And I can smell it. Oh, that's so horrible. It's so horrible.
Our kids don't know how good they had it.
Yeah,
Heather loves hot dogs, don't you?
No.
Make those damn buns. They make those buns, hamburger buns, but they weren't really like hamburger buns. You cut them in half, and I don't even know what to say about them, but they were disgusting. You know,
Dad's hamburger buns? You mean
Yeah.
the ones that Dad made?
Yeah.
Gosh, I remember taking one of Dad's hamburger buns to school, and like every day, take it to school with some peanut butter on it, and I had to shove it in my pocket because we got baggies, and I had to shove the sandwich in my pocket, and that was my lunch. Pull it out of my pocket, and hey, this is my lunch. Oh, you got Fritos? Oh, I never heard of Fritos. How you doing? Yeah. My dad made this bun. You know what? He made some good stuff too. He made some braided coffee cake, and some hot rolls, good stuff. I'd like to know how to make that.
Ray talked about the trip to California. Well, that happened. Let's see. The arrangement was at night, Mom and Dad would sleep in the back with Jeannie in between. George and I would sit on the bench seat in the front, foot to face, and then Ray would be in an orange crate hung from the coat rack. From the Jesus Christ. Yeah, and we'd pull off the side of the road, and I don't know where we slept. I don't know
Anywhere.
how we stayed. Yeah.
Hey, wasn't there some story of Ray getting his bottle heated up in the radiator?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they would drain hot water from the radiator and heat his bottle. The other thing is in that when we took that trip to California, we came home through the Nevada desert. There was no air conditioning in that car. This was the middle of summer. I mean, I thought us kids were going to die. I had the window down. I had my head hanging out of the back like a dog, And then Mom would say, Don't lean out the window. You're going to get heat stroke. And I thought, if I keep my head inside, I'm gonna die of heat stroke. I mean, it was so blooming hot.
Do you remember the bag of water? Do you remember the bag of water they put on the front of the car for the radiator?
Oh yeah. I mean, you didn't dare travel through that. You didn't dare travel through the desert without that.
Oh. No, what? And then during the day, at least it cools off at night.
Well, I don't know.
Hello, Amber. I'm here. Well, I'm getting a phone from my dad. No, so I was just sharing stories on our group chat about all the memories Beth and I had from spending a lot of time at Nani and Pappy's house, because we went to elementary school in Longwood, in the community right across the street from their house. So most we would end up going over to their house after school and hanging out with them, and Pappy would always be in his den, and it was always full of so much stuff. He'd have his radios in there and be making dandelion wine, and he'd be carving violins or doing who knows what, and they're experimenting. And then Nani, she would always sit with us and take out the little projects that would be in the newspaper, where we'd cut out little cartoons and make weird hats or who knows what. And she'd cook us pizza, and she'd always cut the pizza with scissors. And I remember thinking it was so weird.
It is.
She would sit there and read Little House on the Prairie to me and Beth, but I remember just always going into Pappy's den and sitting there and just watching him tinker away, and I never knew what he was doing, but So I was always just happy and content to watch him at work doing whatever it was he was doing.
Well, as a grandparent, that's refreshing to hear.
Yeah, you know, we didn't have, after, I don't know, probably once we were 7 or 8, we were probably closer to 10, 9 or 10 when we ended up moving to Woodstock. After that, we didn't really see him too much, but my memories, you know, those are pretty much all I have. I was so young. They did? Oh, I don't. My dad was just saying that when we moved to Woodstock, my pappy, he came down to help build the tree house my dad built for us.
Well,
I don't really remember that.
That's nice. That is nice.
Yeah. But I enjoy hearing all of your guys' stories. They're making me laugh.
Oh, I think mine's probably pretty short, even though I'm the oldest grandchild. It's like I just remember instances. It's like I remember his ham radio and that, and I just remember visiting him up in Naperville more than anything else, and like his garden out in the back. I think it's the times that I remember when he came back out to visit us in Colorado, and his laugh is what I always remember, because he was always laughing about things, and he was joking, and I think that's where Ray gets that. But I don't know why, and I'm probably wrong. God knows. I mean, but it's like it seemed like when I lost my teeth, I used to send them to him. Mom.
When you lost your teeth, yes.
Yeah. Okay, because I think when I went out there the one time, he said, "Oh, I have all your teeth," and I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
Oh my gosh! When he went through his stuff, there was teeth in his chest.
He'd saved them all.
Yeah. Well, I think what I did is when Linda lost her teeth, I sent them out to Pappy, and I didn't realize he was saving them all.
Yeah.
I didn't know he was giving you your teeth back.
What was his call letters, Linda?
I don't know.
I know.
He knows.
W9.
Yeah, Ray.
W9LQM.
Yeah.
W9LQM. Lovely Queen Mary.
CQ, CQ, CQ.
That's right.
And the other
Ray,
thing.
You remember him doing that in Blue Island, and then he had to go around and put these filters on everybody's TVs?
Yeah, we were talking about that.
He would be in his den. He'd be in his den CQing, and Mrs. Dahlstrom would be getting him on the TV.
Linda, do you remember anything else?
The other thing was he was always playing that Peter and Paul with his fingers, and I swear I was a teenager to figure it out.
I know. Do you guys remember how that went? Two little blackbirds sitting on a wall.
One named Paul.
No, it was two little blackbirds sitting. Yeah, two little blackbirds were sitting on a wall. One named Peter, one named Paul. And I did that with my grandkids. I'm telling you, they were 5 and they figured it out. And I'm going, how'd you figure that out? Yeah, it took me forever.
Took me until the 8th grade.
I knew there was a trick to it, but I could never do it. No.
Well, you wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, see, when I call them in Illinois, and I would be talking to Pappy, and he'd say, "Oh, you're not calling." And she's saying, "Geo, I need the phone. I need to talk to her." So he'd never really talk to me really long on the phone.
No, but he didn't. He wouldn't talk to me on the phone much either. He was not a phone talker. And there's people that are just that way. So, but I was always disappointed, when he wouldn't talk on the phone. I have a story. Uh-huh.
So what do you do?
Amber's got a story she wants to read.
Okay.
She's got a story she wants to read about Pappy.
Ooh.
This is Amber again.
Amber.
Oh, hi, Amber. Okay, go ahead.
Hello. I figured since we're all sharing stories, we should share one that Pappy told himself that I stumbled upon in my dad's stuff. And he was writing it to Mr. Floyd Gibbons. And I think he was some sort of a guy with experience with the radio world and electricity or some sort. You'll hear as the story goes on. So he writes this letter to him. He says, "Dear Floyd Gibbons, I am an 18-year-old amateur radio operator, and although this experience doesn't meet halfway with some of those that you have had, I am still anxious to tell it to you." Quote unquote, the setting. The setting of my experience is in my radio station, which is located on the second floor of our house. And at the head of the stairs, which connect to the two floors, the time is about 7 o'clock p.m., and the weather is a windy snowstorm. I had just finished a new power supply for my transmitter, which would deliver 1,000 volts of pure direct current to the final amplifier of my transmitter. I hadn't tried the thing out before, so I entered into a QSO transmission with an amateur radio operator downstate. After we had been gassing for about a half an hour, I asked him to stand by for a minute while I changed my power. I thought I could get down there better with more power. I unhooked the leads of my old power supply, which delivered 700 volts, and took hold of the two 2-foot-long bare wires of the new 1,000-volt one. As I pushed them through the hole in my panel, they looped over the main switch turn. Sorry, I'm having trouble reading it. They looped over the main switch switch to turn it on with the hole in my panel was small and thus made a tight fit for the wires to pass through. So I twisted the wires around my hands and wrists to get a better grip. I gave the wires a good jerk and flick. On went the switch. 1,000 volts were passing into one hand, up that arm, through my body, down my other arm, and out my second hand. The muscles of my thumbs and fingers possessed a bulldog grip on the wires. My mouth was muscle blocked so that I couldn't yell and helped in muffling a groaning gurgle in my throat. My eyes were slowly closing and my leg muscles were beginning to tighten up. I still had the power to use my mind, and I knew that if I would fall on the floor, it wouldn't be enough to break my grip from the wires, and I would soon be a dead ham. But through the wee slits left in my eyes, I could see the stairs leading down from my lab. And without a second thought, I let myself fall sideways down the entire of my, down the entryway, I think it says, of my falling body, broke the wires and cut off the juice. And a few hours later, when I regained consciousness from the fall, the shock, I was laying in bed. I am living today and still have deep scars in my hands and wrists from the burns. I also have the ends of the wires which were left tangled around my hands when I left the second story for a fast flight to the first. I don't know how long the ham downstate was standing by for me, but the next time I contacted him, I told him how I almost met some of the hams of the great beyond. The end.
Wow. Wow.
Then he says, P.S. In spite of my close shave, I continued a few days later to work on my new power supply. This supply is in use today and has delivered the electricity to my transmitter enabling me to work the flood area and help out as much as my arm permitted. And if my story should be used on your program, I will use the money to build emergency standing power supply, which will be a gasoline-driven dynamometer to deliver the electricity to my transmitter in case it is in need any place where the main power had been cut off, such as the flood. From George R. Warren, 2345 Desplaines Street, Blue Island, Illinois.
And that house still stands today.
Okay, really?
That was the story you guys were talking. Carol, you were talking about that.
Yeah, I didn't have it in its entirety, though. That's impressive, Amber. Thank you.
You're welcome. I took pictures of it, and I sent it to you guys, too, so you can always have it.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing that.
Did you know that Dad taught himself Spanish so he could connect hams in South America?
So he could what? So he could talk to ham.
Oh, yeah. And so how do you say the call letters in Spanish? Pretty good.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember him saying that.
I was impressed that he was able to teach himself Spanish because I can't get a grip on languages at all.
Did he just learn that one little bit?
Do it.
Pardon? Oh.
You know, I remember Dad, I wanted to, before I forget, Dad had his garden that he logged everything in logbooks about how the plants were doing, and he'd watch them I think he made an entry every week or something, but he would go out to the garden in his white lab coat from Union Carbide, and he'd have his clipboard, and he'd be checking on them, and he'd write stuff about the plants.
He's writing about the damn trees.
Yeah, the trees too, and I think he prided himself with knowing what type of tree he was looking at. And I remember one time we were across the street in Naperville at the Joseph's house, and the maple trees dropped their seeds, and there's weed trees everywhere. And this guy had a couple of trees coming up in his garden, or along the side of his house. Not really a garden, but a shrub bed. And he's looking, and oh, look, there's a silver maple. And Mr. Joseph just keeps walking like he didn't hear it. And Dad sees another one. Oh, there's a silver maple. And the guy, he just kept walking like he didn't hear Dad. And then he burst out really loud, look at this one. Here's a silver maple. Dad, oh my gosh.
Dad, he liked that scientific part of his life, and he hung on to that. There's stories about him at work that he kept a logbook about every day. He logged into his logbook, and he was on this collagen project. Gosh, they were talking about collagen in high school. When I was in high school, no one else ever heard of the term, but it was around our dinner table all the time because that's what Dad was working on. And they were making some breakthroughs with this project, and it was time to go to manufacturing. And Dad would complain that the PhDs at work were getting high pay, but not really they didn't know the math and they didn't know how to do their job. Anyway, the PhD scratched his head when they heard that it had to go into production. He said, well, we're going to have to run these tests all over again. And they're like, my God, man, that'll take a year. And he said, I know, but nobody kept a log on that. Nobody knows. And my dad said, well, I did. And he brought out his logbook, everything, every detail of that log. So they took it to production, and the head of the project asked for Dad's logbook, and they sent it to Washington, to the patent office. And it came back with an accolade on it that said this was the best submission that they had ever had for patent in the United States. And they were awarded the patent.
Yeah, and Dad didn't get any credit, I don't think.
No.
And that's the sad part.
Get credit for that one.
Huh?
That would have been nice for him to get some credit for that. Get a higher pay.
Absolutely.
Here's your bonus this year, George.
Well, not only that, I think there was
somebody else signed the project, so they got the accolade.
Right.
But it makes me wonder.
I think that left him with a little bad taste in his mouth.
Yes. But that wasn't the only thing he did. I'm sure that many of their factory machinery was invented by Dad. That was his job. Producing machinery that would make those damn hot dogs.
Well, not only that, you know the hot dog, they were using a hot dog as a logo. And the hot dog, you know how the hot dog has, or old hot dogs used to have an arch in them? They were not straight hot dogs like we see today. They had a little curve to them. And so they had our little face on the hot dog. And if you see the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile, it's curved. Well, that's the way the hot dogs were. Okay, so they had a face on it. And the hot dog was curved so it looked like it had a hunchback. And Dad told them he drew a new hot dog logo for them. And it was a much better logo where it was turned the other way so that the hot dog was curved so it looked like a chest coming out, kind of proud. Oh. And he submitted that, and they turned him down. They said, that wasn't any good. And then years later, they used it.
Oh, I didn't know that story.
Yeah, and he was the one who drew the original. I mean, not the hunchback one, but the one where it looked like the chest was sticking out. And like I say, the company, I don't think they gave him the credit that he really deserved because he did so many things for the company.
Yeah, well, that was his constant complaint, that the guys with the degrees were getting all the raises and he didn't get a raise.
Yeah. And what he did,
doing all the front work.
But the thing is he was actually benefiting the company. It was for their good, and financially they gained.
Right.
So
that's.
I think so.
Spring.
It's in the
February.
spring.
Just flop down because you feel like it.
Oh, geez. Oh.
And I think Dad held a grudge on that all the way until almost he died. I went fishing with him and Gordon one time, and I left them alone for 15 minutes. And I had to drive someplace or something, and I came back, and there's Dad and Gordon standing in the water up to their waist and picking these bobbers and rubber worms and stuff out of the water. And I said, what the hell happened? And that damn Gordon tipped me over. Couldn't sit still in the damn boat. Their tackle boxes are floating and all the bobbers and the rubber worms and everything, they're picking them off the bottom of the water. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? All that stuff is meant to get wet. Get out of the water. You know? And then we were camping, and it was a rainy night, and Dad had siliconed the seams or something on his pup tent, and I don't think he did it properly because the tent was leaking like a sieve, and the water was just running through the seams. And Gordon got fed up with it, and he picked up his sleeping bag, and he went and got in his car. So, hell, I can't sleep in here. Got up and slept in his car. Dad and I sleeping in the pup tent in a pool of water. And Dad was madder than hell and woke up the next morning and started yammering about Gordon bending one of the tent poles. That's why the tent was leaking. So I think his grudge with Gordon went way back.
Yeah. There used to be a story told about Emily and Dad being sent to the store for bread in the morning, and they came home and they had eaten the inside out, and all that was left of the bread was the shell.
Yeah, I remember that one too.
Oh well, somebody said that.
How did he set his Indian costume on fire? Does anybody remember?
No, you? Oh, speaking of
I
fire,
don't.
did you hear about the burning the garage down?
Oh, Carol did that. Yeah, no, this was when Dad was a little a little guy, and he had an Indian costume, and somehow it got on fire, and I don't remember the story about that. And I don't know how that started.
I never heard about that.
Jeannie, you remember talk about a rivalry with a cousin? He was held up to that cousin, like that cousin is smarter than you, and he can remember the names of all the cars. Do you remember that?
Oh, there's always been like a worn rivalry. There was a rivalry between the, Grandpa and I think his brothers, and then, the offspring, and I don't know. But there may have been a rivalry, but they all came together and they were crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember Dad and Mom telling me a story about Grandpa and his brothers went to the landfill. They called it the dump. And they found somebody's old glass eye in a case. And they brought that thing home. And they were showing everybody, wow, look at what we found. like it was a real treasure. I mean, like this is the Hope Diamond or something. Wow, look at this glass eye. But they were always, Grandpa and his brothers were always going down to the dump and looking for trash.
Oh. And what about the story of getting the lumber in Wisconsin? And the truck was so full of lumber that the front wheels would come up off the ground. They weighed down the back. So Dad and his brothers had to lean on the engine and ride on the hood in order for them to get the lumber home.
It's not like you would take some of that out and make it in 2 loads. No, that would be heaven forbid.
That's when they were building the cabin, wasn't it?
I don't know.
They went to some auction.
You guys mean Ray's trash digging is inherited? He comes by that naturally?
Yes. Yes. It's in the DNA. If you dig deep enough, you're going to find that that's embedded. If your boys are that way, they can't help it.
Yeah, I think something goes back to the cousins.
Something goes back to the cousins. Oh,
yeah,
anyway.
Cousins that got married and had us.
Yeah. Oh, probably. Yeah, this was our great grandmother and great grandfather on Dad's side. In fact, it was Grandpa Warren's parents, and his parents were first cousins. So that got really confusing. Did Grandpa call them aunt and uncle? His or mom and dad, or did he call his grandparents, aunt or uncle, or grandpa and grandma? What name do you use? You're everything to me. Anyway, I don't know if the grandkids knew that their great grandparents were cousins, first cousins. This would be like Justin marrying Amber. Yeah.
I'd heard that one.
Did you hear that one?
Yeah, I heard that before.
Okay.
They came over from England or something, and then they met, and maybe like they didn't know they were related, and they fell in love.
No.
And all of a sudden
They knew. No, they knew.
Okay.
They knew.
They lived. Okay, the grandmother, my great grandmother came over with her 2 daughters and lived with her brother and his wife. My great grandmother, brother and his wife and son who married one of the daughters. So, and of course,
they all knew.
Yeah. So, well, Ray and I talked to the daughter, or granddaughter of the son that came over with the two girls. Anyway, and she was telling us that the son was saying, you cannot marry your cousin, his sister, his half-sister. He said, you cannot marry your cousin. And so they skedaddled over to Iowa to get married because it wasn't legal in Illinois. Remember?
And then they came back?
Yeah, I don't... Yeah, he did. He was going to turn them in. That was right. He was going to turn them in.
Well, yeah, anything that's wrong with us, our DNA, that we're a little squirrely, is probably because of that.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, listen, Amber, I want to thank you very much for setting up the ability to have this conference call. This is wonderful of you to do. Thank you.
And
so
also,
much.
I would like to say, Heather, thank you for starting this Facebook page to get everybody involved and get this moving.
Here.
I just had an idea.
Thank you very much.
Well, I'd love to hear everything
about this.
Yeah, this
Heather,
was all
I had an idea with Heather.
This was all Heather. All I did was provide a go-to meeting phone number. So, Heather, this was really cool and very sweet and thoughtful, and I'm really glad that we all had the chance to do this.
Yes, me too. I'm so happy that you initiated it.
Well, I'm very glad that I got to hear everything. Well, I think, my dad was the youngest, and obviously, Aunt Jean, you were, already moving on with your life by the time that he was even born. And then my dad was kind of older when he had me, so I kind of feel like I was at the end of, all the family, everyone. Well, yeah, but everyone was all old and, off doing their own thing, and I was, kind of like this little. No, but you know what I mean. Everyone was doing their own thing. And so it's so nice for me to, but I'm so happy to, be able to hear all these things, because I don't really feel like I got the experience to get this kind of thing growing up. So it's really nice for me to hear everything you guys have to say. And, I knew it was something that it seemed like my dad was pretty excited about. And, I wanted to make sure that everyone else got the chance to, to think about Pappy too, and to take the time to have, a nice little day connecting over old memories. Because, I thought since he was so excited, I'm sure that some of you guys will be excited to talk about him too. So I'm glad that you guys all enjoyed it, and it was wonderful hearing everything you had to say.
This was a special opportunity. We each have a piece of memory of Dad, and they're each different. Now we have a composite picture of the man, and this was very nice.
Yeah, and Uncle Ray recorded it too, didn't he?
I think that's what he said.
Uncle Ray, what? So you're going to pass it along to us? Oh,
all too well. Well, listen, guys, I am going to sign off. I've enjoyed this immensely.
Yeah.
Me too.
Hey, guys, here.
And let's keep in touch.
Before you guys go.
With all this electronic stuff, it's easier to keep in touch anyway.
Yes. Okay.
Facebook.
Wait, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay, hold on. I figured a nice way to end this would be one of Pappy's poems to let us all know that he's in a place of peace, and he's happy. And this was a poem he wrote on April 5th, 1967, called Only One King. Only one king out of the whole world. Only one heart of love to share. Only one king as bold and brave. Only one king gives happiness as he. Only one king can be kind but firm. Only one king with blood so rare. Only two breeds make a king so great. Only one king I follow and wish to be. Only one king as great as he. My father, the king, is he.
How nice. What a wonderful way to end it. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Love you all.
Love you too. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
See ya.
Why don't you tell them that you're the one who wrote it? Aw. Yeah.
Okay, is everybody gone?
No.
Who said no?
Heather. Wait, Uncle George, you wrote that?
Yeah, that's the poem I wrote about my dad.
Oh.
And Amber thought it was something my dad wrote.
But you wrote it about him. But still about him.
Huh?
But you wrote it about him still, so it's still about him.
Yeah.
No, wasn't, did you write it about Pappy or did you write it about Scott?
No, I wrote about my dad.
You did?
Yeah.
Aw, there you go.
Oh.
So now I know.
Thought he wrote it.
Okay, it was so cool. You said about him.
That was pretty neat thing, Heather. All right, I'm gonna go. Thank you very much.
Me.
Downstairs.
Bye-bye.
Bye.